Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream and podcast for July 7th, 2022. I am Aaron Schatz, the editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, and I am joined as always by Mike Tanier, and our special guest for this week is our own film room correspondent, Derrik Klassen. I would like to say hello to everybody who is watching us right now on Twitch and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to find out when we're on. As I will explain at the end of the show, that's about to get more often than it has been so far this offseason. Don't forget, if you're listening afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network, to also subscribe so you get all of our shows, because there's going to be more of them. But first, we have to finish out our tier lists. We've done all the positions in the NFL. Well, we didn't do kicker and punter. We're sorry, we did not do a special teams tier list, but we haven't done quarterbacks yet, and that's the biggest one. So we are here today to do our quarterback tier list, which, I mean, let's be honest, is almost all based on who your starter is. I mean, there are certain teams, I think, where you have to take into consideration if there's a rookie, heir apparent. But for the most part, this is going to be ranking starters for the 32 teams.
Yeah, and Ross Corbett, our producer, helped us out by making these beautiful graphics you're about to see. We wanted to have the quarterback's face on the graphic, but I'm old, and those little thumbnails are really small, and I can't tell. I don't know what some of these guys actually look like. I hate to say, I know what Jimmy Garoppolo looks like because he's so handsome and dreamy, and I know what Tom Brady looks like, but some of them I didn't know. So we have these beautiful graphics you're about to see. And as Hitchhiker Pie said, this won't be controversial. I'm worried it won't be, because most of these are kind of straightforward. People are going to agree with a lot.
I think this is going to be a lot less controversial. I think this is going to be a lot less controversial than the other ones. Like, honestly, I think people pretty much know where the quarterbacks fall.
Well, we're going to start at the bottom, and you'll see, if you can see the graphic, there's a slot labeled S.E.P. And if you're old enough to remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, S.E.P. stands for somebody else's problem. You put something behind an S.E.P. field, it disappears. You don't have to think about it. And who am I putting behind the S.E.P. field? Of course, it's the Cleveland Browns. If you guys want to talk about the Browns, just made news yesterday, go for it. I'm going to sip my soda and watch.
I mean, listen, Deshaun Watson is very good if he plays. Yeah, the important thing about Deshaun Watson is not to play the quarterback wins game and assume that just because Houston was 4-12 2 years ago, that it means Watson wasn't playing very well. Watson was playing very well.
I feel like it could go from anywhere from B+ to F based on news, and that's where we're at with this. And again, shout out to Ross, who had to go and fix the Browns little capsule down there so that the right faces were on it there. And you can see Jacoby Brissett is hanging around, waiting in the wings, ready. But who's not waiting in the wings right now? Well, let's take a look at the F tier. And the F tier, maybe we have to change a little bit, because the first team on the F tier is the Carolina Panthers, who also made news yesterday and probably upgraded their quarterback situation a little bit.
Yeah, I would say Baker moves them up to definitely not F.
Yeah. All right.
But maybe somewhere on the D+ C. Yeah, like the D+ C line is kind of where I'm teetering with him.
Ooh, okay.
So I guess we'll see how it fills out before I want to change that.
Yeah. Any thoughts? This is our chance to talk about that trade, I guess.
Here's the thing about that trade is that what it does is helps save Matt Rule's job. Because
he thinks that's what it does.
Improves the chances that they're going to go 8-9.
Yeah.
And then you can be like, see, we're building something.
Right.
But nobody thinks stats people like me are probably the most pro Baker Mayfield, because he does have years, not last year, obviously, but he does have years where his stats are pretty good. And, obviously that comes in part from the system that he was in and the running backs in the offensive line that he played with and everything. But, he's definitely, I think you could argue that he's an average starting NFL quarterback. It's really hard to know how much of last year's struggles was that injury. But what does that get you if you're the Carolina Panthers? Does that turn you into a playoff team? No. Is it something to build for your future? No. It just makes it more likely that you're going to go 7-10 instead of 5-12.
And at least in my understanding of like Ben McAdoo's offense, this is not the type of offense that Baker Mayfield had previously been successful in. Like 2020 is probably his best year, at least statistically in the terms of the way that people think about him. I don't think Ben McAdoo's offense is anything like what that offense was at the time. Like it's a lot more just like gun, drop back.
Yeah.
I've seen Baker do that and it's not very good. So that's really my biggest concern more than anything. Because honestly, they upgraded the offensive line. The receivers aren't bad, but just like schematically, I think it makes no sense. And Baker has I've kind of lost my trust in him. So he's probably like a slightly below average starter, which again, it's better than Darnold. It doesn't change this team's fate.
This is a shotgun wedding on every turn. McAdoo does not want Mayfield. Mayfield doesn't fit McAdoo. Rule doesn't want McAdoo there because that's obviously the look over the shoulder guy. The Browns didn't want to have to make this deal. Everybody did a pay cut. Everybody traded conditional 6-round picks. It's a shotgun wedding. So, yeah, it can get to 7 or 8 wins. I don't know if that saves Matt Rule's job, though, because he's sort of ordered to make this move.
Joey Sucks is right. The 7 seed is a low bar. In the NFC this year, look, there's a lot of random chance in the NFL. That's why our projections in the book have such a wide range of possibilities. There absolutely is a chance of Carolina sneaking into the playoffs. And this absolutely increases that chance over what it would have been with Sam Darnold as the quarterback. So, yeah, but still, even if they sneak into the playoffs, they're going to do so as a sacrificial 7 or 6 seed. They're not building. This didn't cost them anything. And it doesn't get them anything.
And honestly, if in this world where they do win the 7th seed, it's going to be because the defense happens to play like top 5 ball. Like it's not going to be because the offense is incredible. It's going to be because the offense is fine and the defense just goes crazy.
Right. And that's a tall order. There's obviously some scattered talent on that defense, but
but they're probably not that type of unit.
Right. When we get to the quarterbacks, when we get to the higher tiers, I'll say I probably like Carolina more than the other teams that we're going to have in D+, but I don't like them as much as the teams that we have in C. So I kind of think D+ is the right place for them right now.
Fair enough. Well, let's finish up the Fs. And the Fs were for wishful thinking quarterback competitions, which the Panthers were clearly involved in until they brought Baker in. The other 2 teams that are on everybody's short list of wishful thinking quarterback competitions are the Seattle Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons.
The Seahawks one, I'm not interested at all in like what these players might be because we know what Geno is and like we know that Drew Lock probably sucks. I'm just more interested to see like what the offense does to change because obviously Russ couldn't really target the middle of the field. Right. And he really, really liked being in gun and just like running stick and verts, and that was it. So I'm just interested to see if they change up schematically, but like it's obviously going to be very bad.
Seattle is of really very little interest to anybody. Like you have to play in an absurdly deep fantasy league for this to matter at all. And I don't think anybody is going to be doing much prop betting on Seattle quarterbacks. The other team that you have at F might have some fantasy interest, but from an actual football perspective, also looks like a mess.
Yeah. And the F tier was brought to you, by the way, by US Open Tennis, your source for Drew Lock. The worst quarterback competition I can remember, and I'm not talking about, well, we've got a rookie and he turns out to stink, but he was the rookie. 2011 Washington with Mike Shanahan, he tried to run Rex Grossman and John Beck out there as his quarterback 1-2 punch. Yeah, you got to check. This is, I believe, after the McNabb thing falls through. That's what this looks like, where we're just, here's some quarterbacks who have played, and that's what you get. But you're right, it's different for the Atlanta Falcons because you at least do have Ritter in there, who I think is a rookie who we can see move up. And I have a soft spot.
The Atlanta Falcons matters because whichever guy wins the job will run and have running yards.
That's right.
And I think obviously you can like sell yourself on potential with Ritter, rookie, blah, 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 all that stuff. Even with Mariota, I think you kind of can, because I think a part of his downfall wasn't necessarily talent. He just got hurt. Like his shoulder was like, it was basically barbecue at a certain point. So if that's better, he could actually be like a decent starting quarterback, but just probably not good.
Like I'm good with Atlanta being an F, but if you said to me, which of these teams would we come back at the end of the season and go, wow, they ended up a lot better than we expected.
Right.
There's a small chance it will be Atlanta.
Right.
There's like no chance it will be Seattle. Like at the quarterback, not that Seattle won't be better than we expected overall, but at the quarterback position, it's just not going to happen. Thornton says Seattle's competition is only of interest to DK Metcalf trying to decide whether to lose. And Joey Suck says the Seahawks are either way into their own Kool-Aid or they're praying that the 49ers cut Jimmy Garoppolo.
I feel like this is almost like a soft tank situation where Pete Carroll's up there, like as a, no, we can't, look, I'm still here, we're not tanking type of thing, but that they're just like just let's fart our way through this year and see what happens.
Seattle will end up with one of the 2023 quarterbacks. I'm pretty confident in it.
Right.
And they've earned a year to just like, who cares, and not worry about their job. I think they're fine.
We also had a visit from Tua Tagovailoa, who sounds like a character from my nightmares, who's saying he's the best quarterback in the universe. If there was a real Tua Tagovailoa, I think that would be true. We'll be getting to Tua, but we're not getting to Tua in the F tier, and we're not getting to Tua in the D tier, because the D tier is for teams that are like, hey, we got a veteran who starts and has started for a while and is a veteran, and that's all they have to say for themselves. I'm going to throw all three of them at you at once. The Detroit Lions with the mighty Jared Goff. The New York Giants with the mighty Daniel Jones. And the Washington Commanders with the orchid Carson Wentz.
Right. This is where I have the requisite mention that Wentz's stats were better than you think last year and were kind of average. And I still think this is the right tier for him because that locker room stuff absolutely matters. And the idea that he may regress to what he was 2 years ago also matters.
Yeah.
So I'm totally fine with him being in this tier.
And Wentz was also just a case of like, his numbers are probably better than we thought. But if you stick an average quarterback in that offense, the numbers would have been better. Because I think the offense was just set up very well, and we know
from your film room column this week, if people haven't read it yet, you're very big on what Matt Ryan may be able to do in that offense.
Right.
So, the idea of the offense, the scheme is good, and the quarterback was limited.
Yeah, it was schemed up so that those throws were easy. The downfield shots were designed for him to be able to hit them, and they still ran screaming from him as quick as possible.
Right.
They still draw their own arm off to escape this guy. So that's it for the stat argument. I'm guessing we have nothing to say about Danny Dimes and Jared Goff here.
Oh,
I've never been a Daniel Jones guy, but I will say earlier last year, he played fairly well until the offense started to just fall apart injury-wise.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of interested to see what it looks like with Dable. I don't think he's ever going to be like good, but he might get to the point where he's like good enough where he just keeps getting jobs. And for him, that's good for him. That's awesome.
I don't have it right at the end of my mind here, like right on the tip of my tongue, but there's a bunch of stats in the book about Danny Jones and how no quarterback who's been that bad for 3 years has ever really developed, and except for like Jeff George having like a good year with Randy Moss and Chris Carter or something like that. Like, it's just there is not a lot of like history for a guy who's played like him for 3 years to suddenly get good.
But, like Derek says, I can imagine like a Ryan Tannehill offense where he's dropping back, handing off, got protection, looking downfield, using his legs, and then using his deep ball to look okay for a year somewhere along the line. But this year's not going to be that year, and it'll be an anomaly if it happens.
Your friend Tua Tagovailoa, by the way, wants to know, does Baker Mayfield make the Panthers a good team? The answer is no. There is a possibility that what he makes them is a average team. If their defense comes together the way it was early in the year, right, when then they didn't quite play that well, and then J.C. Horn got hurt and whatever.
And they were playing
J.C. Horn, and the defense comes together and whatever.
Yeah, and the Texans.
They could be an average team.
Right.
Yeah, but they're not. No, does he make them a good team? Really not likely.
Yeah. D+ is we got a second-year guy or maybe a first-round rookie. So I'm going to start here with, we just mentioned them, the mighty New York Jets and the great Zach Wilson and his I got so much heat about the D+ on the offensive line. And maybe the D+ was tiny. Maybe C- would have been better. I'll admit that here. But like the Jets are over the moon about their supporting cast. And wait, who do we have? Who's that behind Zach Wilson on the Jets photo?
I think that's Joe Flacco.
My neighbor. He's there.
He is the backup quarterback if Zach Wilson can't do it. And, and they do have promising pieces, even though we had them rated low in pretty much every unit, because those promising pieces have not yet come close to their potential. And right now they're just promising pieces.
For as low as I am on Zach Wilson, I don't think I'm lose his job to Joe Flacco. Low on Zach Wilson.
No, but I think D+ is the right tier for their quarterback situation.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos for making sure Flacco makes the appearance, though. That's a big there's a couple of guys making appearances on this. I'm happy to see them. The Chicago Bears. Someone asked on Twitter, is there going to be a Justin Fields on the Bears and a Justin Fields on a team that wants him different rankings? And it's like, no, not really. He's squarely, I think, in the same tier, just in general, like 20,000 feet up as Zach Wilson would be.
Just to respond here to Hitchhiker's Pie comment, I think he's responding to my Daniel Jones. Nobody has ever been that bad for the first 3 years and then really developed.
Yeah.
I'm really only looking at the last 30 or 40 years. Looking at Jim Plunkett and life before 1978 is a very different world. And Rich Gannon didn't play. Rich Gannon was a late round pick who didn't play a lot of quarterback in his early years. So he's not comparable at all to Daniel Jones, a guy who started his first 3 seasons.
Thordane points out, right after the Eagles Super Bowl win, I went around New Jersey trolling a Saquon Wentz straight up trade. And honestly, teams both should have taken it. Thordane, are you Elliott Shore Parks? If so, admit it now. Anyway, next guy, because I think we have nothing to say about our boy Fields. The Houston Texans with the great Davis Mills. Who is Davis Mills?
Yeah, I feel like the thing you have to say about Davis Mills is we all want to write him off. But the fact is, every reason to believe that Zach Wilson is better than he looked last year is a reason to believe that Davis Mills is better than he looked last year. Other than collegiate history, because like Zach Wilson was in a bad situation with bad teammates. Davis Mills was in Houston. Like, it was a bad situation, right? Like, we talk about how like everything was set up for Mac Jones to succeed. Like, everything was set up for Davis Mills to not succeed.
With the Mills, it's just, he was a lot better than I thought he was going to be. In particular, he was way better outside the pocket than I thought he was going to be. Granted, he gets there more than he should, because I don't think he's like actually a threat to really run or anything. So I don't know why he plays outside the pocket as much as he does, but he's more comfortable out there than I thought. However, I generally just don't care for his style of play. It's very like, he can beat you in the 1 to 10 area out of gun. And that's about all he's got, which I think is the fact that he's doing that at a competent NFL level for like a 3rd round rookie is pretty impressive. Right. I'm just skeptical that this is ever like more than some watered down version of Jimmy or something like that.
Yeah. It's
or like a bad Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Like a success in games nobody watched, success in the game where Rex Burkhead ran for 6,000 yards against the Chargers. A lot of things where it's like, yeah, you know, like you said, like, oh yeah, he's a very good, competent short passer. I'm surprised too. I think he's pretty comfortable in this tier.
Yeah, I'm fine with Davis Mills being in this tier.
Okay. And the 4th team I threw in D+ is the Steelers, because they have a kind of a combination between they have the 1 first-round rookie prospect and they have the veteran who's a veteran who would have been a D in Trubisky. But the combination, the competition, I felt gave them a D+.
Yeah, honestly, this entire tier, save for Carolina, really is just like the hope tier, because really I think the tier under them are mostly better players. Like, if I needed a guy right now, I'm high on Fields, so obviously I'd rather have Fields, but like I might rather just have like Jared Goff than, you know, Davis Mills right now. It's just that you're hoping that Davis Mills can be better or that Zach Wilson can be better. So I'm kind of fine with all those guys here.
Yeah, this is really this is the hope for growth tier plus Baker Mayfield.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, like I put together this team, and it's got Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin and Tyreek Hill and the 5 blocks of Greta, the offensive line. Yeah, give me Goff, maybe give me Danny Jones,
right?
Maybe give me all the Excedrin in the world and Wentz and all. But here in the real world, it's like, these guys are going to possibly improve, which is better than saying, oh, we're just.
Whereas, like, we know Jared Goff is like QB 27 or whatever. Like, who cares?
Right. Well, then that takes us, I guess, naturally to C tier, which is sort of like wait and see tier, because we're sort of evaluating these quarterbacks who have shown some upside perhaps, or like have a high reputation. The first we're going to put in here are the hometown, home of the Philadelphia Eagles, home of Joe Flacco, home of Reggie White Shrines. Philadelphia Eagles, who are evaluating Jalen Hurts. Very good scrambler, very good effort guy, etc. Doesn't throw over the middle. Actually, doesn't throw deep. It's a scatter shot, chaos situation throwing deep. So,
Yeah, this is probably fair. Like, I do think the argument for him moving up would be that he's one of the best 3 runners in the NFL at the position. And you could make the case there, but just as a passer, like, he's gotten incrementally better every year, basically going back to like his sophomore year at Bama, which I think is impressive. But he, like you said, he still doesn't really target the middle of the field very well. Sometimes he's like really one and done, which again kind of works because he's an athlete, but I would like to see him progress. And again, like you said, like his deep ball is pretty much just like he throws go balls on the sideline, and that's it. Like if he's throwing a post, it's not really there. Like sometimes the deep overs are a little like, I don't know. So I just think what he gives you as a passer is he has some strengths, but it's just too limited right now.
Yeah, I think C is a good place for him, even though he does have that rushing value. I think when we get to the C+ teams, they're generally quarterbacks I would rather have.
Right. And so next to him we're waiting and seeing and evaluating, and a guy who has some attributes and has a Alabama background. That's right, folks. It's Tua Tagovailoa with someone looking over his shoulder there. I see Teddy Bridgewater in the corner there, that little picture too. A guy who we know has some value as a short passer, obviously has a better supporting cast, and has a lot of question marks going into his 3rd season.
I would move him down a tier, I think.
Ooh.
Until we see it from Tua, I don't like, obviously the situation is incredible and he could be good. Especially because I do think Mike McDaniel could be an interesting play
Don't do
caller.
that quite yet, because I'm going to argue for keeping him.
But wait, you're going to argue for Tua?
Keeping him at C, not dropping him to the.
I don't know. He is fairly accurate in like the 1 to 15 yard area when they do a lot of their RPO stuff. But as a drop back passer, I just think his pocket management is pretty bad. I think the way he processes is like not the worst, but I wanted to see more than I think we have seen to this point. And I think his deep ball is horrendous.
I mean, his stats last year as a passer, not as a runner, obviously, but as a passer are very close to what Jalen Hurts did, except for the higher completion rate. When I look at the players in the D+ category, I'm like, I think I would rather have Tua right now. Fields has the promise that I know you and I both are like believe that Fields has the promise, but otherwise I feel like I would rather have Tua and Bridgewater. And I think also the fact is having Bridgewater there as a just in case. Bridgewater threw deep surprisingly well last year.
You know what? Actually, I might be okay with keeping them because of Bridgewater, not because of Tua. Because straight up, I think Teddy might. If I needed a guy to win a game right now, I might just rather have Teddy. It's just obviously they want the promise of whatever Tua might be.
So, and Teddy could just spit the ball to Tyreek. He could just spit the ball to Waddle. He can spit the ball to Gesicki, which is kind of what we're going to be asking Tua to do anyway. And by the way, Useful Title has it right. Watching all the RPOs has hurt you, Derrik.
Dude, I'm telling you, until they fix the sport, I am going to punish every quarterback who does this.
RPO for Derrik is like the shift for baseball fans. It's just destroying Sunday after and Saturday for you.
Line up and beat your man. Let's play real football. Come on.
Okay, so based on potential, putting this individual a notch above the other rookies from last year, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I think of all of them was the biggest victim of circumstance and has the most potential of last year's rookies.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a pin in this one until we get to another team that I want to compare Lawrence to.
Oh, boy.
Are you thinking of moving him up or down?
Well, since I said till we get to another team,
I guess it would have to be up.
Team is not a lower team because we've already done the lower team.
I mean, if we're already hinting at moving up, I probably would want to do it too, because I really just think Trevor is that guy and was tasked with.
All right.
Honestly, one of the most impossible circumstances I've ever seen.
I'll say now then what I'm going to say, what I was going to say when we got to New England.
Ooh.
The fact is, and I say this as a Patriots fan, And despite how good Mac Jones was last year, there is nobody right now who would take Mac Jones over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
The difference between Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, as far as the potential, is a sizable difference. And so I feel like if most people right now, or all people, I feel, if given a choice between those quarterback situations, would rather have Jacksonville's quarterback situation, then we've got to have Lawrence on the same tier that New England is on. He has to at least be on the same tier that we have New England on. And I'll give it away. That's C+.
And yeah, and I think if we just went back like before the draft and we just said theoretically, what happens if we gave all of these guys the best landing spot of whatever teams take quarterbacks? And what happens if they all get the worst one? I think Trevor obviously looks the best of anyone in New England. And then I don't know if Mac looks as good as Trevor did in Jacksonville. Not that he looked very good, and not that that was a situation possible for any quarterback.
Right.
But like, I just don't see how Trevor's situation last year should really determine.
I feel like the quality of play that Mac Jones did show last year, despite having obviously being in a good situation, I think that does make a difference between him and the other prospects from last year. Mm-hmm. But not Lawrence. Lawrence was just too good of a prospect. So if we've got the Patriots as a C+, we have to have the Jaguars as a C+.
Fair enough. Hitchhiker's Pie says that the Mac had the higher mean and the smaller standard D. Lawrence has the lower mean and higher standard D. I don't know if we have to base the mean.
I don't think Lawrence has a lower mean.
Right.
I
don't think he does.
Fields might have a lower mean. Zach Wilson, but Lawrence has a higher mean. It's just we saw the lowest possible performance from Lawrence last year.
Yeah.
Because Jacksonville was a disaster area. All the Urban Meyer stuff. Yeah. And I add to that he lost his best receiver in week 4.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a nightmare.
The one running back gets hurt in camp, the other one gets hurt, and they play him for a month, and then they right. Okay, well, controversy time, because one more team in C. Wait and see. The San Francisco 49ers. Trey Lance, who has thrown, 94 passes since 2019? Come on. I love him. I'm rooting for him. How can we put him any higher than this?
I think that if it was just Lance, he would be actually the tier lower with the other prospects from last year. But because it's still Garoppolo, and you're still judging both Lance and Garoppolo, this is the right place for them.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Because I do love Lance. I think he can be really good, but he's thrown 70 passes. Like, this is not, you can't really take anything away from that. And then Jimmy, this is probably just the tier I would put Jimmy in anyway. So I think this is fine. Yeah.
Jimmy would be dangerously close to being in there with Wentz and Goff for me, but he has other attributes in terms of being able to come in.
The production with Garoppolo has just been much better though. And I mean, I think if you consider what Garoppolo has done in that offense compared to the backups in that offense, Garoppolo is more of a C. He's more of a C than a D.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, Storm Templar says, I think the Jags aren't just a bad situation, probably the worst in the last decade. I have to go back to the 1970s when Norm Van Brocklin would scream at his quarterbacks for the Atlanta Falcons. To think of something that's like not just a bad scheme and everything, but toxicity where you can't even go to work to find an example as bad as the Jaguars. This is a historically bad situation in terms of coaching.
Hitchhiker's Pie thinks we might be underestimating Mac because PFF loved him relative to all the rookie quarterbacks and had him in the top 10 to 12 in the NFL. I mean, we had him in the top 12. He was in passing DYAR. He was 12th. Yeah, I think Lawrence has that much promise.
That's the thing. Nobody's saying that Mac isn't that good. It's just that it's not hard to imagine what Trevor would have done in that offense.
Right. Okay. We're going to get to C+, and C+ is for when we have a plus veteran, but not an elite veteran. And we're going to interrupt the podcast here for a bromance. And that's a bromance between a young man and the quarterback he loves so much. The Indianapolis Colts and the bromance between Derrik Klassen and Matt Ryan. Go.
So I would move them up a tier. I know they're not going to get moved up a tier. But I really think Matt Ryan was so I think this actually goes back a few years. Obviously, when they were when he won the MVP in 2016, that was the peak of Matt Ryan. And then Kyle Shanahan left, And the offense was like a watered down version of that with Steve Sarkisian. I think Matt Ryan was really, really good in 17 and 18. And then 19 and 20, the offense started to fall apart. So the production just wasn't there. Last year, I think in a better fitting offense, because I think 19 and 20 was Dirk Cutter was running the offense again, which Jesus Christ, that should not be happening for any NFL offense. And now that he had Arthur Smith, I think you saw the best parts of Ryan kind of come to life again. He was really good from under center. All the play action stuff they did. He was good at drop back from under center when they did it. I just think that he gave the offense everything it needed. It's just that his number 2 receiver was Olamide Zaccheaus. That should be a practice squad player. So I think the situation was just almost impossible for him to produce well. And I have a lot of faith that in Indianapolis, he's going to be able to produce well, not only because the talent's better. I just think Frank Reich is a really good coach and really good at the particular things that I think Matt Ryan is good at.
I just feel like there's aging going on here. And I do think that's part of why he's not what he used to be. And that's why I also like him on this tier. I get your opinion. I mean, I think if Reich makes him better, then that's not an argument that Ryan should be higher. It's an argument that the coaching staff in Indianapolis is really good. And I'm down with that argument.
Yeah.
But I think this is the right place for him, given the aging. The fact that certain quarterbacks have not shown that they age naturally should not confuse us with the fact that most quarterbacks still will age naturally. And I think Ryan is aging.
I think my argument would just be he's just better at everything that Mac Jones is good at. They're this very similar players to me, and he's just better. I think Mac could, if Mac takes another step, I think that might not be true depending on how he develops. Yeah. But I think Matt Ryan is just straight up better at all the things that Mac Jones is good at. And that's not to take away from Jones, but
yeah. I understand. I think when we get to the B guys, though, I don't see Ryan. I don't see Ryan in the same tier as the B people right now.
I think that's fair. He almost is in his own little
B minus.
Yeah, you're almost 32 tiers here.
Yeah.
Because you can really micromanage. And I was joking with you, we should do some sort of internet bet on Matt Ryan, because I am the Ryan hater skeptic, and you are the Ryan lover, but we have to find what the benchmark is that says you think he'll do and I think he can no longer do.
So my starting point is I keep saying that the Colts will get to the divisional and lose in tragic fashion. So that's where that's where my brain is at. So if you could maybe say they just don't get to the divisional at all. I don't know. But my bar is they're going to get there and lose in
divisional
horrific fashion.
Is the second round?
Yeah. I think they can beat a wild card team and then just do something horrific against the Chargers or Chiefs.
We're kind of on the same page, because it's and Colts fans will be look at us. We made it to the divisional round. Let's hang a banner. It's your quarterback is now 37 going on 38. You have all these other problems. And that's why I say, so we're kind of, it's kind of you're saying, hooray, they're going to do this. I'm oh my God, this is all they can do.
Right.
But maybe we can tear that off, just so we won't do it here on the broadcast, but we'll do it before the season starts.
We'll figure something out.
Yes. The Matt Ryan Pocket Universe, the darkest possible timeline. Okay, next up on the C+, hey, it's a good veteran quarterback. Well, let's get Kirk Cousins and stick him in here now for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's nothing to even say about Kirk at this point. He is what he is. He's the 12th best quarterback. That's whatever.
He still gets clicks. It's amazing. If we put a hot take in here, it would be our most popular video. But yeah, all right, fine. C+. Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans. And I see Malik Willis is on the picture too, to remind us that they do have a quarterback of the future there. But I think this is all about Tannehill right now.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about Tannehill. Tannehill was terrible in our stats last year.
Yeah.
Awful. He was 27th in DYAR. He was negative. ESPN's QBR puts him 8th. So I would have to figure out, is that a yak thing, or is it what is the what is the reason for the difference? It's a really big difference, and I don't quite know what the reason is. So I don't quite know what to do with Tannehill, but because he was so much better in previous seasons, I'm okay not really dropping him from this tier. But based on last year, I feel like he should be lower.
And I would say they just had guys hurt all the time last year. So
yeah, that's an absolute reason. It's an absolute
Yeah.
explanation. There's no question about it.
But even that like still doesn't really make sense of the 8th in QBR versus I don't know, just a bizarre year for him. But like you said, I think what we saw from him in this offense for 2-3 years, like this is probably fine.
Yeah.
The scheme was bad early in the year. It was pretty predictable. Oh, and just by the way,
The scheme change actually does matter. I think that's a good point of losing Arthur Smith too.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Treylon Burks has been pretty much unable to get on the field. He has asthma and other things, so it's going to be really kind of chewy in Tennessee, I think, this year. Well, last guy in the C+, I would have put him in D, but I don't want to be accused of being a hater. But you guys can, that's what the show is for. Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints. And I believe the Red Rifles in it looking over his shoulder, but I don't think that's too much.
I don't think that's likely that Dalton would actually take the job away.
No.
Just stuck Taysom on there too.
Especially with, honestly, if we were just thinking like what Andy Dalton was as the Bengals quarterback, I'd be like, maybe he could try, but he was horrific when he had to play recently. Like actually just bad. So I don't think Andy Dalton really is part of the equation.
Yeah.
Winston is interesting. Last year, Winston's DVOA was 13.6% when he played, which would have been like 9th or 10th in the league.
He was good.
Like he was good when he played last year. I feel like I don't think he should be lower than this. I think this is a good place for him. Maybe down to C. I wouldn't put him any lower than C.
I think I'm fine with keeping him here because honestly, he did that with a worse cast than he's probably going to have this year. Because I think, Olave alone kind of fixes a lot of things. I don't really know exactly what we're going to get from Michael Thomas, but I think getting anything from Michael Thomas is obviously better than they got last year. So I think if we assume that Winston can do that again in this offense, and, they did keep Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator. So I think, this is probably fair. He can be produce like an above average quarterback. I think he can. Yeah.
And going back to Tannehill, Hitchhiker Spy points out Tannehill was 12th in EPA and 13th in EPA per play. So I do not know quite why DVOA had Tannehill so much lower than other advanced stats. It's interesting. I would have to really look at a play-by-play breakdown of how Tannehill did in each of these stats to figure out why the difference.
Opponent adjustments? Could that have
I don't. My little sheet that I have open doesn't have the opponent adjustments, so I can't answer that. That might have a little bit to do with it, but there's supposed to be opponent adjustments in QBR now, so that can't be that much of it.
Right. All right. Now B is for the tier that you.
Oh, he was really good in rushing. That's part of it. Okay. Yep, that would make sense. That's why he would be higher in QBR, certainly.
Perfect. B. This is for the quarterbacks that you talk yourself into being better than they are, but definitely are like a cut above the guy right below them. And I'm going to start with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, who are always trying to put him up into that top tier. And he doesn't fit comfortably in the top tier, in my humble opinion.
I mean, I love Prescott. Prescott was 3rd in DYAR, passing DYAR last year. I actually do think Prescott belongs in the B+.
Okay.
I'm a big Prescott guy. I feel like he can do pretty much everything, and he's pretty stable.
I think I'm there too, because what Dak was doing before he got hurt last year was insane. They looked like the best offense in football for a minute there, and I think when he's healthy, that is just the kind of player he is. I think he's one of the most cerebral quarterbacks in the league, just in terms of getting the offense into the right play, understanding where the right throw is, all that sort of stuff. I think really the only complaint I have with Dak is 2 or 3 times a game, he just misses in a way that is incomprehensible. But otherwise, I think he's a machine. So I would probably move him up to B+. Yeah.
Fair enough. Hitchhiker's Pie says that my Kelly Green, my Midnight Green heart is showing, and I'm downplaying Dak a little bit. It just seems like he's part of that. It's always something with the Cowboys. It's like, oh, there's a little injury, and now we can't play. Oh, one of the receivers is hurt, and now everything is falling apart, But B+ for Dak Prescott, that is good. Let's see about Derek Carr, who I put a notch above the Kirk Cousins gang. And does he belong there?
I'm good with the idea that he's a notch above those C+ guys, but a little bit below Prescott. I think that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay. And the other guy, and this was the last guy I actually put on any of the list because it's difficult to make sense of the ups and downs of his career, is Kyler Murray in the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously does some things phenomenally well, has some serious deficiencies. And so I stuck him here.
This might be the toughest one I've had to rank this entire time, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like he's definitely not higher than this.
No.
I definitely don't think he's lower. So I guess
Then
maybe
I
he's
think
fine.
this is
Never mind. It wasn't that hard.
All right, so circling back to Matt Ryan, now that we moved Dak up, does Matt Ryan belong here?
I think so. If we don't move him, I understand because I know that I'm definitely the highest on him, but I think so.
And I just feel like it's hard to know because he did have no receivers last year, but he's just getting
I do understand, like, the production was pretty bad that you're kind of having to, like, stretch the logic a lot, which I've tried to do.
Michael Walsh says that B makes sense for a guy who is half A and half C. I don't know if that's a response to Kyler Murray or to Matt Ryan, because I think Matt Ryan is half B and half C, which is why we're sort of stuck here.
Yeah, B-.
Yeah, he is a B-. I
don't know if we can smoke one. Can you do that?
I would leave him in C+, but I don't know if we can add a tier right now. No, we can't. Yeah, all right.
I think it's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we'll leave him here. But to any Colts fans who are watching or listening after the fact, we think he's better than the rest of that tier.
Right.
Because what I would say about not moving Ryan up is, like, I do think that both Carr and Murray have, like, some degree of explosive playability that Matt Ryan probably just doesn't have anymore. Right. He might be better at some other things, but that explosive playability really, really matters in the NFL right now, and he doesn't quite have that the way those two do.
Yeah, I'd say that's true.
Okay. So we have Dak in B+, and you know what? He probably will fit pretty well in this category. I'm going to start with two guys at B+, who are the great young guns of the AFC. I refer, of course, to Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals and Justin Herbert of the Chargers. Two guys who haven't done enough yet for me to throw them into these top tiers, but obviously impressive young quarterbacks.
The only thing about Burrow is the sacks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to really, I think, learn more this year just how much the sacks are Burrow and just how much the sacks are that offensive line last year. But it's definitely partially him. It was definitely partially him. It was definitely partially him in the playoffs. I mean, listen, the fact is our stats are lower on Burrow than anybody else's. But QBR was also kind of low on Burrow because of the sacks.
I think Burrow is a really good quarterback who people kind of freaked out about because they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good. Him a little bit.
Yeah, like just a smidgen. Like I think this is in the right tier. It's just that I think people have already kind of put him in the next one, and I don't think he's quite there yet. The sacks thing.
I wouldn't put him ahead of Herbert, for example. I wouldn't put him ahead of Herbert.
No,
yeah,
I would have Herbert right now.
I absolutely believe Herbert is ahead of him.
Yeah. With Burrow, the sacks, like, I think he's always going to be that way. I think it's like Russell Wilson, like Deshaun Watson.
That's always going to be a little bit of a detriment.
Yeah, I think even if you gave him the best offensive line in football, that's just the way he's going to play. And I think he gets more value out of it than it hurts him. Obviously, with all the deep ball stuff, I think he's incredible, making moves outside the pocket. He gets more out of it than it takes away from him. But it's undeniable that is like kind of a hindrance to what they do.
Yeah, Yeah, I think he moves in the pocket well, and I think he gets out of the pocket very well. But he's looking for the home run, looking for the home run.
I understand.
It's not because he can't see defenders. He just is like, he believes he's Superman. He just thinks he's God. And like, I get that. Like,
I would definitely, I understand why you guys would probably argue to keep him in B+ and not move him down to B. I would probably move him down to B, but I realize I'm kind of alone in that world. So that's fine. And our projections for him for this year are actually really, really strong. So like we project that he's going to come out better in our stats this year than last year. So like there's still room to grow for him because he can take fewer sacks.
Right. And he should because the line is better. But you're right, Derek. I realize I've seen the hero ball youngster turn into Aaron Rodgers. I've seen the hero ball youngster turn into Wentz. So there's a long leeway in between the two of them. In a different side of the spectrum, a veteran quarterback who had a very, very strong year last year, and every once in a while throws an interception deep in his own territory directly to a defender, the great Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams. I put him in B+. I was thinking about B.
Yeah, my only argument here would be, do you feel like the Rams made him last year almost as much as the Lions took away from him when he was there?
It's tough because obviously playing for the Rams is a boost for any quarterback. When you have, a top 3 play caller, a top 3 wide receiver, and a pretty good offensive line, that's always going to help. But like, I'm fine with keeping him here because I think what he did to fundamentally change the structure of the Rams offense, it's really hard to understate. Like that, it really like fully overhauled what they can do and unlocked everything. And I think when a quarterback can do that, I think that has value.
Yeah. You're talking about the passing ability.
Like the fact that they don't have to go under center and just only throw deep overs.
Right. Okay. Well, from the passing ability to the elite rushing ability with some passing ability as well, and coming off of an injury, the ever controversial and delightful Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens in the B+ category.
I think he should stay here. I mean,
yeah,
at his best, he's been better than this.
Well, at his best, I mean, yeah, he's been down the last couple years, but he hasn't had great guys to throw to other than Mark Andrews. So
I thought he was really good.
I feel like it's hard to know what to do with him. I mean, obviously the rushing value is valuable. It's hard to know quite what to do with him.
I thought he was really good early last year until like the entire roster got decimated. Like the entire offensive line went down. They couldn't cover anybody, so they had to keep up in points. And it was just like a whole nightmare. And then once the Miami game came, I think he just never got back to what he could have been or what he's been in the past. But I still have a lot of faith that like, if they are not the most injured team in the NFL again, I think he's going to, belong with these quarterbacks, Burrow, Stafford, all that stuff.
Okay. One last possibly controversial B+ quarterback based on what we saw last year, based on some of the ups and downs that we've talked about with some of these other guys. I put Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos at B+.
I think based on what he was before the finger injury, and then in the last 4 weeks of the year or so, I think he still belongs on this tier. And I think what he did when he first came back from the finger injury was very likely the finger injury causing him to not play well.
And he kind of rushed himself back for that. Like he just should not have played. I still have like stylistic qualms with Russell Wilson. And it's more of like if I was coaching an offense, this is not what I would want my quarterback to be. But I think it's pretty undeniable that he's very good and very productive. So I think this tier, especially that he's going to get a much better cast now, or at least like a more seems like they're going to be more willing to entertain the offense that he wants to run. I think that is probably going to be good for him.
They're great. They're actually going to give him a lot more deep balls and a lot more weapons, and they're not going to do as much. Like, try and throw 10 yards over in the middle of the field. Ideally, especially if Hamler's healthy, it looks like Hamler's healthy. It's like you'll have like a little bit of Percy Harvin game mixed in if he's actually available, and so that could be a difference maker for Wilson. Are we all the way up to the A tier? And the usual suspects are sitting down there, folks.
Can I?
What's missing? Go ahead. Yeah.
I kind of almost want to move Justin Herbert up. I really think he's that good.
I kind of almost want to move him up too. In fact, I was going to say if we had an A- tier, I would put Herbert in that tier.
Yeah, maybe it would be that just for like he's so young and you're still projecting a little bit, but like that's a cyborg, dude. Like that guy is insane to me. He's really just like Josh Allen with a a slightly smaller bandwidth. Like, the bad plays aren't as bad.
Well, we're about to talk about Josh Allen, who I think may be our missing logo.
Yes, we're missing a guy. It's Josh
Are
Allen.
we missing Josh Allen?
We're going to get obliterated by Bills Mafia here. We left him off because he's beyond categorization, Bills fans. But like, you're putting Herbert all the way. Can we lead a comeback against the Texans without throwing interceptions first? Can we do that? Can we do that before we put him on the same tier as Tom Brady? Can we do that?
I mean, can you have a healthy roster for those games?
Let's start on the A tier, and then I'll make my little argument.
I'm sorry, but you broke me. A tier, okay. Well, we have Aaron Rodgers, 2-time reigning MVP. I did not put him on the S tier, but on the A tier. Now, again, the S tier is sitting there, guys.
That's an interesting
Hall
argument.
of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer.
That is an interesting argument. Like, I think the guy has won the last 2 MVPs. I think there is a strong argument for putting him on that S tier.
Yeah, I think you can move him up. I probably would.
All right.
I will say too, I think these top 2 tiers are the closest of any of the tiers that I would have. I think the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are very, very close.
I agree. And I had, when you're putting the S tier, I'm struggling in terms of what, doing the projection versus obviously we have Hall of Famers up here. And that's, I initially put Tom Brady heresy on the A tier and not the S tier. Okay. Because what's phenomenal as he is, it is incredibly supporting cast driven at this point. So go ahead.
It is hard. And by the way, this ties into what Useful Title just posted, which is, what do you think about Rodgers without Adams?
Yeah.
Still incredible.
I mean, the reason why I voted for Rodgers for MVP over Brady was because Rodgers had to deal with all the injuries on his offensive line. But his offensive line did play well despite the injuries.
Yeah.
So,
but I think you can make the case that's partly because of the way Rodgers plays.
Yeah. And Hitchhiker Spy says Rodgers seems to suffer without elite wide receiver talent more than the others. See how mediocre he was before Adams broke out. Well, yeah, but look at Brady the last year with the Patriots. Same
also,
thing,
I think
right?
that was just a Mike McCarthy.
That's part of it.
I think that wouldn't be a problem with Matt LaFleur.
I am,
or at least not to the same degree.
I would be comfortable with a 3-man S tier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I could move Brady up because to me, I think kind of the distinction that you would have to make between these 2 tiers is the S is elite and they've proved it over a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. The A tier is more they're elite, but maybe we want to see slightly more.
Okay, so let's do Mahomes first before I talk about Josh Allen.
S tier.
Since we're missing the Allen, logo. I understand that Mahomes had his issues at times last year, but it seems to me if you're going to say who's the best quarterback in the league, he still is the answer.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. His slightly watered down version of being good was still producing a top 8 quarterback or whatever. He was still awesome. It's just that I think he wasn't awesome in the same exact way that we'd seen in, 18 and 19 and all that stuff. So I think we kind of just took it for granted in a way, but I think he's still unbelievable. And I think the ways that they changed the offense this year, I think he's going to prove himself again. I think this is a no-brainer.
You go see the greatest guitar player in history, and he winds up doing these 10-minute solos that are a little bit get a little goofy along the sides. It's well, that's clearly the best guitar player in history, but sometimes he's doing goofy stuff and he's got to roll that back, whatever. So
did we find Josh Allen?
Yes,
there he is.
Yes, look at that.
Let's go.
So my argument is I believe Josh Allen is in a tier lower than Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes because of the inconsistency that he showed last year. He had some bad games I realized that in the playoffs, he was unbelievably good, but he had some bad games last year. So if we're going to put those 3 guys in S tier, then I'm totally cool with Allen in the A tier with Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
I've made the argument, and I realize Buffalo fans will think I'm hating. I would take Herbert over Allen right now because of the consistency, and it's not a very big difference. But yeah, I almost think Allen and Herbert. Before, when we had those guys in the A tier, I was going to say Herbert and Allen are kind of A-. But if we're going to put those 3 guys in S, then I'm totally comfortable with having Allen and Herbert in A.
So to restack, we're going to have Rodgers, Brady, and Mahomes in the S tier, which sounds right. And then we have Josh Allen and Justin Herbert in the A tier. I'm uncomfortable with how high Herbert is. I'm uncomfortable with that, but you guys are comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that. Like I would take Herbert over Allen slightly right now.
I mean, they're just so similar in a lot of ways, but it just feels like Herbert just has less of the bad. And like Allen's absolute 1% plays are probably a little more impressive. Like what he does at his absolute best is pretty crazy. But Justin Herbert's best is not very far off to me, and I think he can get there pretty consistently as well. So I think,
to be blunt, Josh Allen of the playoffs was an S tier quarterback.
Yeah,
right.
Josh Allen
of the regular season was a B or B plus quarterback.
Mm-hmm. He had some horrific games. And I will say some of those I think were a game planning problem. Like the week 1 against Pittsburgh, that was a game planning problem. They came out in empty and 10 personnel every play, and Pittsburgh was just like, all right, we'll run sim pressures in cover 2. Game. Yeah, and like the Jacksonville game, like that was another one. They ran a bunch of sim pressures, and I don't think Buffalo's offense had answers for it. And that some of that is Josh Allen's fault, but I think a lot more of it was just like sometimes they had some horrific game plans and didn't know how to manage. But then you saw towards the end of the year, when they started getting into some more under center and really mixing up what they were doing with their run looks and pass looks and play action and stuff, I think you saw a more complete version, not just of Allen, but like of the entire offense. And that obviously extended into the playoffs.
And we didn't see Herbert in the playoffs because he threw interceptions while trying to come back against the Broncos and the Texans.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
Jerry Tiller can get off.
He also completed 4th and 11 and 4th and whatever 13, and whatever he did against the Raiders was insane.
That was great, but we're like, it's like look at those 5 plays and they're like overwhelming. Like,
but this is why Herbert and Allen aren't in the S tier, because they did have the bad games during the regular season. But I think Herbert is more consistent than Allen. But Allen's highs are higher. And what Allen was in the playoffs was incredible. So it's interesting. Hitchhiker's Pie, who would you rather have for a playoff run, Allen or Herbert? And I think it might be true. In a playoff run, you want to gamble that you're going to get those A-plus performances. So you probably would rather have Herbert in the regular season and Allen in the playoffs. Because if Allen rolls pairs, rolls 7 over and over again, or whatever you want for your craps metaphor, then he's unbelievable. Like what he was in the playoffs last year was so good, so good in those 2 games. But it was just 2 games.
I think that's fair. And I think especially because I do think Josh Allen is a little bit better as like a designed and short yardage runner. Herbert is still really good in that area, but I think Allen's a little better. I think that also really tracks when you get to the playoffs and stuff. So I kind of like that split of like that would be where you're separating them.
It wasn't my idea, Bills Mafia. Go after them. Okay.
We'll have the 7 Chargers fans on our side. It's fine.
Unfortunately, there's not much of a Chargers Mafia.
And Jeremy Tillery's leading them, and so they keep getting blocked. So
All right, that's our list. I feel good about our list.
Yeah.
I feel good about our list. I feel at the end of the season, I feel our belief in Trevor Lawrence will be rewarded. Yeah, I also think Mac Jones is not going to be as good as he was last year, since I am apparently his offensive coordinator now.
I trust you. I would trust you as his offensive coordinator, Aaron, over Heckle and Jekyll there. Where did we put them at C+?
We put them at C+. Yeah.
Oh, Patriots fans are coming after us.
Shout out. Tom Norvell shouts out to Josh Dubow from the AP for having Carr correctly in this tier for the last 5 years. My God, Josh Dubow takes so much garbage from Raiders fans who think Carr is better than he is. and who don't understand. The other thing about reading Josh Dubow's Twitter is current Raiders fans do not understand how good Rich Gannon was.
Yeah. That's understandable.
Like, it is not a slight on Carr to say Rich Gannon was better than Carr. Rich Gannon was better.
Yes. He had a couple of tremendous years. And folks have to remember, John Gruden was a very good offensive coordinator and coach in his day. He really was. I'm not saying anything about his personal life or what he's done the last couple of years. That was a really good offense. That was innovative, and it was hard to run, and it was clever to master, and you needed to be like a sharpshooting, short passing, quick decision, quick release guy. And Gannon was that for a couple of years, and they had a couple other guys like Hostetler and Brad Johnson who were good at it too, but Gannon was probably the best, and he could run too.
Yeah. All right, I think that does it for our show. These are our tiers. We'll put them up on Twitter and get a bunch of arguments. Next week, we are going to start with a series of shows promoting and previewing Football Outsiders Almanac 2022. And we are going to be doing 2 shows a week starting next week. So next week starts Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday and Thursday shows. We're starting with the AFC South. So Tuesday, Mike will not be with us. It will be me and Dan Pizzuta and Tom Gower talking about the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. And then Thursday, it will be me and Mike and JP Acosta talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. So that is what we have in store for you next week, Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
When's the book come out, Aaron? When's the book?
The book comes out Tuesday.
Yes.
Probably.
Oh, geez.
Stay by your computer Monday afternoon if you really want the book.
Monday afternoon, maybe, folks, depending on whether
the official release date is Tuesday.
Book releases on Monday at 5 p.m. Deshaun Watson news, 5:01 p.m. Monday. Mark your calendar. Everything is obsolete.
No,
all of our
at that point, if it comes out after the Deshaun Watson news comes out after the book, it becomes somebody else's problem. I will tell
unbelievable
people curious that the simulation in the book assumes that Watson will be suspended for the entire year. So we did the simulation with Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback because the league seems pretty adamant about this suspension. Yeah, probably.
We jinxed it. We jinxed it. We jinxed justice itself, folks. Sorry.
All right, that does it for the show. Thank you so much to everybody watching and everybody commenting in the discussion thread. Thank you so much for everybody listening on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Thank you to Derrik. Thank you to Mike. Everybody have a great weekend. We're going to finish up the book. We will see you Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.